Her power let her into his mind, but what she found made her weep. Whispers in the void. The neural implant at the base of Lyra Novak's skull hummed softly as she calibrated its settings. In the quiet of her quarters aboard the Alliance vessel Horizon's Dawn, she could feel the faint presence of the 322 minds that populated the ship, each one a unique constellation of thoughts, fears, and desires. At 32, Lyra was considered one of the Alliance's most accomplished empaths, her abilities honed through years of service in diplomatic missions and intelligence operations. "Commander Novak, you're needed in Briefing Room 7, announced the ship's AI, interrupting her meditation. Lyra sighed, her violet eyes fluttering open. The constant demands of her position left little time for the mental recalibration her abilities required. She smoothed her regulation uniform, a sleek, midnight blue affair with silver insignia denoting her rank and specialty, and headed for the lift. Admiral Thorne was waiting, his weathered face grim beneath the harsh lighting of the briefing room. Beside him stood an unfamiliar figure, tall, with copper-brown skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. His posture spoke of military training, but there was something else, a stillness that immediately caught Lyra's attention. "Commander Novak, this is Lieutenant Damian Foster, Terran Special Forces," Thorne said. "He's been assigned as our liaison for the Helios 9 investigation." Lyra extended her senses automatically, a professional habit when meeting someone new. What she encountered made her pause. Where most minds broadcasted a chaotic array of surface thoughts and emotions, Lieutenant Foster's mind presented as a smooth, impenetrable wall. "Interesting," she murmured, studying him with new interest. The lieutenant's expression didn't change. "I've been briefed on your abilities, Commander. I'd appreciate if you'd announce your intentions before attempting to read me." Admiral Thorne cleared his throat. "The situation on Helios 9 is deteriorating. 3 outposts destroyed in the past month, each attack more devastating than the last. The colony is demanding answers, and the diplomatic corps is concerned about rising tensions with the Vega Confederacy." Lyra's attention shifted to the holographic display as it flickered to life, showing the smoking ruins of what had once been a thriving research facility. "The attack pattern doesn't match vegan technology," she observed. "That's where you come in," Thorne said. "I need you to interview the representatives from each of the potentially involved parties. Find out who's hiding something." "And Lieutenant Foster's role?" she asked. "I have first-hand experience with similar weapons signatures," Foster replied, his voice deep and measured. "And I've been tasked with ensuring Terran interests are represented." "And keeping an eye on me," Lyra thought, though she kept this observation to herself. The sessions began the following day. Lyra interviewed delegates from 7 different worlds, sifting through their thoughts with practiced precision. By mid-afternoon, she was mentally exhausted, but no closer to identifying the culprits behind the attacks. Foster had observed each interview silently from the corner, his expression unreadable. When the last delegate departed, he handed her a steaming cup of tea. "You look like you could use this," he said. Lyra accepted it gratefully. "Thank you. I don't suppose you'd care to be my next subject. Your mind is unusual." A hint of amusement flickered across his face. "I'm trained to resist psychic probing. It's standard for certain divisions within special forces. I could break through those defenses," she said, more curious than threatening. "You could try," he replied evenly. "But it wouldn't be comfortable for either of us." Over the next several days, a strange dance developed between them. Lyra would probe gently at the edges of his mental barriers during their shared meals or strategy sessions, and Foster would deflect her attempts with increasing sophistication. It became almost a game, one that distracted her from the growing pressure to produce results in the investigation. But as the evidence mounted, a disturbing pattern emerged. The attack signatures contained elements of both vegan and Terran technology, yet neither empire would have anything to gain from the destruction of the Helios 9 outposts. "Someone's trying to instigate a conflict," Foster suggested during a late-night analysis session. They were alone in the ship's observation lounge, the vast emptiness of space stretching before them. But who? Lyra pushed a strand of dark hair behind her ear, frustration evident in her voice. And why now, when the peace accords are finally stabilizing? Foster's gaze was distant. Sometimes the people who fear peace the most are those whose power depends on war. Something in his tone made her look up sharply. There was a momentary flicker in his mental defenses, a hairline crack in the otherwise perfect wall. Instinctively, she reached out with her abilities. What followed was unlike anything she'd experienced in years of psychic work. Instead of breaching his mind, she was pulled in, tumbling through a maelstrom of fragmented memories. A burning village. Children screaming. The weight of a weapon in his hands and the crushing knowledge that he'd fired based on false intelligence. The faces of innocence, forever etched in his memory. When she surfaced, gasping, she found herself gripping the edge of the table. Foster was watching her, his eyes no longer detached but filled with a pain so raw it made her own chest ache. "You shouldn't have done that," he said quietly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, genuinely shaken. I didn't expect to see my greatest failure." His smile was bitter. "That's what they train us to bury deepest." Lyra hesitated, then reached across the table to touch his hand. "You carry it with you. All this time. Why not let the memory suppressants take it away?" "Because someone should remember them," he said simply. "The people who died that day deserve to be remembered by the man who gave the order." In that moment, something shifted between them. The professional boundaries blurred, replaced by a fragile understanding. The next morning, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A junior analyst discovered an anomaly in the radiation signatures from the attack sites, a distinctive pattern associated with a supposedly defunct mercenary group known as the Meridian Collective. Foster paled when he saw the data. "This can't be right," he muttered. "The collective was dismantled 3 years ago after the Proxima uprising." "Unless someone wanted us to believe that," Lyra countered. She reached out tentatively with her mind, surprised when she encountered less resistance than before. "You know something about them, don't you?" Before he could answer, the ship's alarms blared. Admiral Thorne's voice came over the comms, "All personnel to battle stations. We have unauthorized access to weapons systems and..." The transmission cut off abruptly, followed by a massive explosion that rocked the entire vessel. Lyra was thrown against Foster, who steadied her with strong hands. "We need to move," he said urgently. "This isn't a coincidence." As they raced through the corridors toward the escape pods, Lyra's mind was spinning with possibilities. The corruption ran deeper than they'd imagined, possibly reaching into the highest levels of the Alliance leadership. "I need to see everything," she said as they sealed themselves into the pod. "No more barriers, Lieutenant. If we're going to survive this and expose the truth, I need to know what you know." Foster hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "It's not pretty in there, Commander." "Few minds are," she replied, placing her hands gently on either side of his face. "But I suspect yours is more beautiful than you give it credit for." As the escape pod jettisoned into the darkness of space, Lyra Novak dove deep into the mind of Damien Foster, unaware that what she would find there would forever change them both. Echoes of truth. The escape pod hurled through the vacuum of space, its emergency beacon silenced by Damien's quick thinking. As the horizon's dawn became a distant pinpoint of light behind them, Lyra slowly withdrew from his mind, her hands trembling. "The Meridian Collective wasn't dismantled," she whispered, her voice hollow with the revelation. "They were absorbed into Alliance intelligence. Operatives embedded within every major power." Damien nodded grimly, checking the pod's navigation system. "I discovered fragments of the truth during a mission on Proxima. That's when they tried to eliminate me, classified it as a training accident. I've been gathering evidence ever since, working my way closer to the inner circle." Lyra's violet eyes reflected the starlight as she processed everything she'd seen in his memories. Admiral Thorne is part of it. He's been orchestrating the attacks on Helios 9 to trigger a war between the Alliance and the Vega Confederacy. It's bigger than just war profiteering, Damien said, programming coordinates into the navigation console. The collective believes in human supremacy across the galaxy. They see the peace accords as humanity surrendering its destined dominance. The pod's engines flared as they changed course toward a small mining outpost on Ceres Delta, far from the main shipping lanes. Lyra watched Damien work, seeing him with new clarity after their mental connection. His disciplined mind, once a source of frustration, now impressed her with its resilience and integrity. Despite everything he had endured, he had never surrendered his core principles. "They'll label us traitors," she said quietly. "They'll say we sabotaged the horizon and fled." "They already have," Damien replied, showing her a news bulletin on the pod's communications screen. Their faces stared back at them under the headline, "Alliance officer suspected in terrorist attack." Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 300 lives aboard the damaged vessel. "There were people still on that ship when we left. People I've worked with for years." The explosion was contained to the command deck, Damien assured her. "Casualties will be minimal, that wasn't the objective. They needed a spectacle, not a massacre. And they needed us gone." The journey to Ceres Delta took 16 hours in the cramped escape pod. They spoke little, each lost in their own thoughts. Occasionally their hands would brush, a moment of contact that grounded them both in the reality of what they faced. The mining outpost was a haphazard collection of prefabricated structures clinging to the asteroid's cratered surface. Its population consisted mainly of independent contractors and those seeking to disappear from official records, the perfect place to hide while they planned their next move. Damien led Lyra to a shabby hostel on the outpost's lower level. "I have a contact here," he explained, knocking on a rust-streaked door. "Someone who owes me a favor." The door slid open to reveal a woman with white blonde hair and cybernetic augmentations visible along her temples. Her eyes widened at the sight of Damien. "Juno," Damien said with a nod. "We need help." Juno Benedict was ex-Alliance intelligence, discharged after a mission gone wrong had left her with extensive cybernetic replacements and a profound distrust of authority. Her small apartment was cluttered with salvaged tech and makeshift monitoring equipment. "You two are all over the feeds," she said, gesturing to a bank of screens displaying news broadcasts. "Didn't think you had it in you, Foster." "It's a setup," Lyra interjected. "We've uncovered evidence of a conspiracy within Alliance leadership. The Meridian Collective has infiltrated the highest levels." Juno's expression hardened. "I know all about the Collective. They're the reason I'm stuck on this rock instead of walking on my original legs." She turned to Damien. "What do you need?" "Access to secure channels and a way to contact Commodore Nadia Vela on Helios 9. She's not part of the Collective, and she needs to know what's happening." While Juno worked on establishing a secure line, Lyra found herself drawn to a window overlooking the asteroid's barren landscape. The enormity of what they faced threatened to overwhelm her. Without thinking, she reached out mentally, seeking the familiar comfort of Damien's presence. This time, there was no resistance. His mind opened to hers like a book, pages turning willingly. She saw his determination, his strategic mind calculating possibilities, and beneath it all, a growing warmth when he thought of her. "It's easier when it's voluntary," he said quietly, coming to stand beside her. "I've never experienced anything like it," she admitted. "Most minds are chaotic, undisciplined. Yours is damaged," he suggested with a hint of self-deprecation. "Extraordinary," she corrected him, turning to meet his gaze. "Even with everything you've endured, there's still light there. Still hope." Something shifted in his expression, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. He reached out, his fingertips brushing against her cheek with unexpected tenderness. "You saw the worst of me," he said softly. "And you're still here." Before she could respond, Juno's voice cut through the moment. "I've got your connection." And you'd better hurry, there's a security sweep scheduled for this sector in 2 hours. The communication with Commodore Vela was brief but productive. As one of the few high-ranking officers with direct access to the evidence from Helios 9, she agreed to help them compile a case against the collective conspirators. "I need proof I can take to the Galactic Council," she told them, her weathered face grave on the screen. "Something that bypasses Alliance channels entirely." "The command codes," Damien said suddenly. Every attack on Helios 9 would have required override codes from someone with Admiral-level clearance. "Those would be stored in the central database on Arcturus Station," Lyra added, her mind racing. "But we'd never get within 100 kilometers of that facility now." Juno looked up from her terminal. "You wouldn't have to. Not physically. The empath relay network connects to that database." Lyra's breath caught. "The relay? Of course." She turned to Damien. "Empaths like me can connect to a network that links Alliance facilities across the galaxy. It's how we share critical intelligence instantly." "Can you access it from here?" he asked. She hesitated. "Yes, but the process would leave traces. They'd know it was me, and they could track our location." "How long would it take them?" "Minutes. Maybe less." Damien exchanged a look with Juno, who nodded grimly. "I can arrange transport off-station, but it'll be tight." The decision was made quickly. Lyra settled into a chair while Juno attached monitoring equipment to her neural implant. Damien stood watch by the door, weapon ready. "I'll need to focus completely," Lyra explained. "Once I'm connected, I'll be vulnerable. My consciousness will be in the network." Damien crossed the room, kneeling beside her chair. "I'll be right here," he promised, taking her hand in his. "Find what we need and come back." Lyra closed her eyes, activating her implant. The familiar sensation of expansion washed over her as her mind reached outward, connecting to the vast network that spanned human-controlled space. She navigated the complex web of information, bypassing security protocols using her own legitimate access codes. The Arcturus database appeared in her mental landscape as a towering structure of light and data. She slipped inside, searching methodically for the command logs from the Helios 9 attacks. Time was compressed in this state. What felt like hours to her would be mere minutes in the physical world. When she found the logs, the evidence was unmistakable. Admiral Thorne's personal codes had authorized each attack, alongside 5 other high-ranking officials. The conspiracy reached into the heart of Alliance Command. Lyra copied the data, preparing to withdraw from the network. But before she could, another presence brushed against her consciousness, cold, calculating, and familiar. Admiral Thorne. She recoiled, trying to sever the connection, but he had anticipated her actions. His mental probe lashed out, attempting to trap her in the network. "You disappoint me, Commander Novak," his voice echoed in her mind. "You could have been part of reshaping the galaxy." Lyra struggled against his hold, feeling her grip on her physical body weakening. "You're betraying everything the Alliance stands for." "We are saving humanity from its own weakness," he countered. "The other species will never allow us to realize our potential. They fear us. As they should." In the physical world, Lyra's body convulsed. Damien gripped her shoulders, calling her name, though she couldn't hear him. Her implant glowed an angry red at the base of her skull. "What's happening?" he demanded of Juno. "Someone's attacking her in the network," Juno replied, fingers flying over her equipment. "I can't break the connection without risking permanent damage." Damien made a split-second decision. "Connect me." "What? You're not an empath. We've established a link before." "Do it, now." While Juno hurriedly attached a temporary connector to Damien's temple, Lyra was losing ground against Thorne's assault. His decades of experience gave him advantages she couldn't counter, and he was systematically cutting off her escape routes. "The collective has planned for this moment for 15 years, Thorne was saying. Soon, the Alliance and the Vega Confederacy will destroy each other, and from the ashes, we will build a human empire that spans the stars. Suddenly, Lyra felt another presence, familiar, strong, and unwavering. Damien had found her. His mind wrapped protectively around hers, creating a shield that Thorn couldn't penetrate. Together, they pushed back against the Admiral's assault. Lyra felt Damien's strength flowing into her, his disciplined mind providing the structure she needed to organize her counterattack. With a final surge of combined will, they broke Thorn's hold and severed the connection, catapulting back into their physical bodies. Lyra gasped, her eyes flying open as Juno disconnected the equipment with practiced efficiency. "We need to move," she said urgently. "They'll have traced the signal." "Did you get it?" Damien asked, his face pale but determined. Lyra nodded, pressing a data crystal into his hand. "Everything. The command logs, communication records, even their future targets." They barely made it to the transport ship before Alliance security forces descended on the outpost. As they broke orbit, heading for the Helios system and Commodore Vela's protection, Lyra found herself watching Damien as he piloted the small vessel. "What you did was incredibly dangerous," she said softly. "Untrained minds aren't meant to enter the network." "You were in trouble," he replied simply, as if that explained everything. "You let me see all of you," she continued. "Even the parts you've spent years hiding." He was quiet for a long moment, the stars streaking past the viewport casting patterns of light across his face. "Some burdens are easier to carry when they're shared," he finally said. Lyra moved closer, placing her hand over his on the control panel. "What happens after we deliver the evidence?" "Justice, hopefully. Exposing the collective won't be the end, but it's a start." "And us?" The question hung between them, fragile and weighted with possibility. Damien turned his hand to interlace their fingers. "I've spent my life building walls, Lyra. Until you showed me that some are worth tearing down." She smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder as the ship carried them toward an uncertain future. For an empath who had spent years drowning in the thoughts and feelings of others, the quiet certainty of Damien's mind felt like coming home. "I think," she said, watching the stars blur around them, "we've both been looking for the same thing. Someone who sees us, truly sees us, and stays anyway." As the ship accelerated toward Helios 9, Lyra Novak and Damien Foster sat in companionable silence, two minds that had found in each other what the rest of the galaxy could never give them: understanding, acceptance, and the promise of something more enduring than the stars themselves. Retriclawed can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.